In today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to animate a walk cycle. For this tutorial, you can follow along using any animation software you like. We're going to be using our phones and the free animation app, FlipaClip. If you haven't seen my previous tutorial on how to use FlipaClip, I highly recommend checking that out first, as it goes over the app and how to use some basic animation principles. So when we're starting our walk cycle, we first want to start off by making a background. So I'm going to grab my ruler here, grab a darker color, and just draw in like a nice straight horizontal line, just like that, for our horizon. And then I'm going to reduce my brush size and just put in two really light gray lines next to each other. These will be the lines that indicate where I want my character's feet to go. And I put one in front of the other because one foot is going to be closer to the camera than the other foot. So this will be our background. So let's go into our layers panel here, and I'm going to rename this layer as BG for background. And then I'm going to make a new layer for my character. Let's zoom in a little so we can see what we're drawing with our character. So for a walk cycle, typically where I will start is with the hips. So let's just draw a circle to indicate where the hips are for now. And for the right foot, I'm going to draw a foot out to the right, just like so. Don't forget to have that back foot just bending slightly on the toes on the contact position. So for this first drawing, I'm drawing the character's legs as far apart as they're going to go. This is called the contact position. And since in this frame, the right leg is just now coming in contact with the ground, I'm going to call this contact right. Now let's draw the rest of our character. For the body on a cartoon character, I'll typically like to draw sort of a bean shape, sort of like this, and then I'll draw the head like so. And now I'm going to draw the arms. And the important thing to remember about a walk cycle is whichever leg is facing forward, that arm is going to be going backwards. So let's draw the right arm facing backwards like so. And then same thing with the left leg. The left leg is going backwards, so the right arm should be going forwards. So that's our finished contact pose. And if you were drawing this as a stick figure, at least for your first practice, I would still recommend using red for the body parts on the right, and then blue for the body parts on the left. So I use the two different colors just because it's easier to see when one overlaps the other. So this is our finished contact position. So this is a walk cycle, right? So the idea is this character should take actually 2 steps per walk cycle, right? They'll step once with their right foot, once with their left foot, and then back onto the right foot. So an important thing to remember about walk cycles is also they take 2 steps. So you want to do 2 cycles. And they're a lot of work, but I think if you follow this formula, you'll have no problem drawing your own walk cycle. So for this walk cycle formula, we're going to need 13 frames. So let's add 13 frames by clicking this plus button until we get to 13 frames here. And for the 13th drawing, we actually want it to loop back to our first frame. So let's hold our button down on our first frame, click the copy button here, which is this 2 stacks of paper, and then go to frame 12, hold down our button here, and then click this clipboard to the right, or paste. And that will make frame 13 our contact right position again. So it'll loop back to the frame it's supposed to go on. So with the arms and legs erased, I'm going to swap the legs around so that the left leg is now facing forward. So draw the blue leg facing forward on the furthest back line, and the blue arm going backwards on this frame, and then the red leg going backwards on this frame, making sure to bend that foot back so he's on his toes. And then since that foot's going backwards, that means his arm is going to go forwards. And in animation, there's a term known as keyframes. So keyframes are sort of like your extreme poses or your storytelling poses. So that's what these frames are. These are our keyframes. So these are the major parts where the arms are pretty much at their furthest distance apart and the legs are at the furthest distance apart. The contact is our first keyframe. The next important keyframe is called the passing position. And the first passing position we want to happen in between these 2 contact points right in the middle. So that's going to be at frame number 4, leaving 2 in-betweens before it and 2 in-betweens after it. So let's draw frame number 4. We'll go to frame number 1, copy it using the copy button up here, go to frame 4, and paste it. Now this is very important. First, I'm going to erase everything we don't need, which are the arms and legs. Sorry, buddy. And then when we're walking, we're not just standing still in a straight line, right? Our bodies move up and down when we walk. So the passing position is where our body is going up. So I'm going to go over to my lasso tool, select the entire torso, and move it up a little bit, just like that. So if we compare it to frame 1 and then frame 4, this is how high his body's going to move up. Let's see, I might want to move it down just a little bit. So now, compared to frame 1, frame 4, his torso goes up. And mostly the hips is what we're paying attention to. The walk happens from the hips. So his hips go up on this passing position. And since his right foot is contacting the ground on this frame, that means his right foot is going to still be in contact with the ground on this frame. And then his back foot is going to be off the air and passing behind the other foot. So that's why it's called the passing position. So let's start off by drawing his right foot, or his red foot, just straight up and down. This pose is fairly simple. Just a straight leg for the foot that's on the ground. And then for his back leg, you can sort of think of it as a number 4 sort of shape. So while this leg is straight, this leg is going to be bent and going upwards. So you'll see a little bit of the knee, and then the foot back here like this. So we'll draw his foot right about here, and just bent forward just like this, creating almost like a letter P shape. So his back foot comes off the ground and starts to pass behind the other foot. And where the arms are all the way out on this frame, the arms are going to be straight down for this frame. So really, the only arm we're going to see is probably the front one here. So let's draw the front arm facing down, just down at his side just like that. And this is what we call the passing position. And since his right foot is the one on the ground, I'm going to indicate that this is the passing right position. And then same thing, we want to copy this whole frame, so click your copy button here. And then we want to go in between this keyframe and where it loops back to the first contact position, go right in the middle, which is frame 10, leaving 2 in-betweens on the left and 2 in-betweens on the right, and paste. And this will be our passing left position. So we're going to erase everything we don't need, again, this being his arms and legs, and we'll just swap the body parts, while keeping the same position that we had before. So this time, his left leg, or his blue leg, is the one that's going to be straight up and down. And it's also contacting on the floor because the previous contact position, his left leg, is the one that just touches the floor. So we're going to call this passing left position. We'll also indicate this is contact left there. And then same thing but the opposite, we're going to have the front leg, or the red leg, pass in front in that sort of number 4 or letter P sort of shape. Just like this. And since it's in front, I'm going to take my eraser and just erase everything on the inside here, showing that that's in front like that. And then same thing, we're going to have the arm just straight down like this. You probably could copy the same arm position from last time, but I'm just going to draw it just in a slightly different position, coming from the front this way. And again, since it's in front of everything, I'm going to take my eraser and just erase everything behind it like so. And that's our passing left position. So now we have all of our major keyframes. And actually, if we were to play our animation just as it is right now, you can kind of see that we've got pretty much our basic outline for what a walk should be. So make sure you get these frames solid and you're happy with these frames before moving on to the next step. So for our next position, we're going to go exactly 1 frame after our first contact position. So frame number 2. So we're going to take our lasso tool, select our entire torso, copy that using our copy button at the top here, go to frame number 2, paste it, and for this frame, we want it to go down slightly. So this position, you could call it the down position, but I like to call it the weight position, because what is happening on this position is the character is finally putting weight on this leg that's connecting to the ground. So on this frame, there's no weight on this foot yet, but as soon as they get to the next frame here, this foot is going to slightly go back just a little bit and be flat on the ground for this pose. So that means their leg's going to bend slightly. So they're finally putting weight onto that leg. And I'm going to indicate that since the right foot is the one on the ground, this is the weight right position. And since all the weight is now on this foot right here, that means that this leg no longer has to be on the ground. And that's why on this frame, it can finally start to lift up. So it goes back a little bit, and you could even have the toes barely touching the ground. But for here, I'll put the foot right about there, And we'll have it also kind of bend, just like that. So it's finally lifting off the ground. I'm also making sure that these legs stay the same width. I don't want them getting too fat or too skinny from one frame to the other. They should stay about the same width from one frame to the next. Very important to keep your volumes consistent like that. And then the arms for this frame, we're going to have them start to come together. So if our widest point is at our contact for our arms, then they're going to start getting closer with the weight position. So let's draw the arms as such. We'll start drawing them coming closer together, just barely. And then same for the left arm, just starting to come together. Usually for hands and arms, I like to draw where the hand is first, and then connect the arm to it afterwards. Sort of makes it simpler. Okay, so there's our weight right position. So there's 2 steps in every walk cycle, right? So we need to copy this whole pose by clicking our copy button, going down to our next contact position, and then immediately the next frame after it, which is frame number 8 in this case, we're going to paste this, and this will be our weight left position. So we'll erase everything we don't need and swap the body parts. And again, this foot on the ground here is going to be connected to the ground, flat on the ground, and going backwards a little bit. And since his torso is going lower, it's going to make his leg bend a little bit. And then we'll draw the arms starting to come together. And that's our weight position for the other step. So there's one more pose that we need to do for our walk cycle. And then the rest will be simple in-betweening. The next pose that we're going to do is going to be one frame directly after our passing position. So in this case, from frame 4, the next pose is going to be on frame 5. So we want to copy the torso again. I'll copy it from this frame. And when we paste the torso, we want it to be just a little bit higher than the passing position. So right about here. And this position is going to be called the up position. For obvious reasons, this is where the torso and the hips are at the highest point in the walk cycle. So I don't really have any tips about this pose other than the foot goes backwards a little bit. So keep that foot going backwards like so. And then for the other foot, in this case his back foot or his left foot, we're going to, instead of having it straight up and down like this, we're going to have it start bending more in this direction. And then for the arms, just have them keep going in the same direction that they're going. So in this case, since his right foot is going backwards, that means his right arm is going to go forwards a little bit. So it'll be about on that same position, but just a little bit forward, sort of like this. And then same for the other hand. We couldn't see it in this drawing before, but here in this position, we'll start to see it just a little bit. You might see a little bit of the elbow in this position. So there's our up position. This is what our up position should look like. And since the right foot is the one on the ground here, I'm going to call this up right position. And this is our first up position, so we need to copy this pose, go to our next passing position, which in this case is on frame 10, go one frame forward on frame 11, and then paste that pose. And we're going to, same step as always, just erase the body parts and swap them to the other side. And then that's our position for the up left position. So now we have all of our major keyframes. So again, the poses you should have at this point are at frame number 1, contact right, frame number 2, weight right, frame number 4, passing right, frame number 5, up right, frame number 7, contact left. Remember the left foot is starting to contact the ground here. Weight left at frame number 8, passing left at frame number 10, up left at frame number 11, and then frame number 13, which is really just frame number 1 again, contact right. So if we play our animation so far, it looks like this. So at this point, make sure to get all of your keyframes looking correct before moving on to the next step. And you'll see when we play it, he kind of pauses when he does his contact right position. That's because frame number 1 is playing twice. It's playing for frame number 1 and frame number 13. Don't worry about that for now. We will clean that up when we export our animation. So now that we have all of our major keyframes, we want to do our in-betweens. So an in-between frame is taking one frame or more and one frame or more after, and drawing a frame in the middle of your timeline to smooth the transition out. In order to accomplish this, animators usually use either a light table with pencil and paper, or with digital, they use onion skin. So if I turn my onion skin on, I can see a green frame for the forward drawing and a red frame for the previous drawing. So now I'm going to do an in-between between this frame and this frame. So if you remember our bouncing ball exercise from our previous tutorial, which again you should check out if you haven't checked out already, we want to favor the passing position, because with a walk cycle, most of the hang time should happen up here on the arcs, just like so. And then it goes down, and then comes back up. So this is how the hip timing works on a walk cycle. So you can think of the hips, the torso, and the timing in general as sort of a bouncing ball. And with that in mind, we want to favor the passing position where it's the highest up. So we don't necessarily want to draw a 50% in between, meaning drawing the head right here, so it's halfway between this drawing and this drawing. What we want to do instead is use what's called favoring or easing. We want to ease towards this higher up drawing up here. So I'm going to draw the torso and the head up this way, favoring towards the green drawing. But for the legs and the arms, we can do just a simple in-between. So I know that my red or right leg needs to go right about here, halfway in between these two legs, like so. And this quickly becomes a mess of spaghetti, but if you've done this enough, you can kind of tell where things are supposed to go, and you can kind of keep track of where things are supposed to be drawn at. So for example, I can see my hand here and my hand over here. So I want to draw my in-between hand right here. So there's the red body parts for this frame. Let's draw the blue body parts, or the left body parts. So I can see my leg is here on the previous frame, and then on the next frame, it's right here. So for the in-between, I want to draw it halfway in between, just like this. We'll see a little bit of the knee sticking forward right there. And then the arm looks like it's right here. And then here you can't see it at all, but I know it's about halfway in between the body. So I'm going to draw the blue arm just sticking out just a little bit this way, just like that. And then if I turn off my onion skin, and let's just erase the parts where there's some overlap. And if I drag my timeline forward and backwards, I can see that this timing is now smoothed out. That looks good. So let's continue that. We've got 1, 2, 3 more in-betweens to do, and then our walk cycle will be all done. So again, I'm favoring the higher up drawings, at least as far as the torso goes. And then for the arms and legs, I'm doing 50% in-betweens for those, meaning I'm drawing their positions about halfway between the previous drawing and the next drawing. You could also refer to that as a linear spacing, meaning that it's not favoring one drawing or the other, it's just a linear position between the two frames. One thing I want to note for this in-between here, if I just turn my onion skin off real quick just to show you. So we have the leg dragging back behind, right? Kind of like his toes are going backwards. And then in this next frame, his toes are pointed straight out forwards, just like that. Well, with this in-between, remember how we were talking about favoring? With this in-between, I could just do a 50% linear in-between and just go from this tilted back, tilted forward. I could just have the tilt be like halfway between those two tilts, just like this. But if I do that, it's boring, just to show you. It works just fine. But for a walk cycle, I find drawing the foot on this in-between like that kind of takes impact out of that step. So what I like to do instead for this in-between, where it's dragging behind and then comes down for the contact position, so I'll actually draw the foot's in-between with it still dragging behind a little bit. So it looks something more like this. So the foot drags behind and then pops into the contact position. So that's usually how I like to do that in-between. Let's continue on. And these two in-betweens, just like before, we can take our previous in-between, copy it, and I know it's an in-between because there's no marking as to what position this is. This is also frame 3. I'm going to copy frame 3 and paste it on frame 9. And that way my torso's in the right spot, and I just need to swap the left and the right. Also, this may seem tedious, and it is. Animation takes a lot of patience and a lot of tedious repeating of tasks. But if you like doing that sort of thing, animation can be pretty fun, especially once you're all finished. The fun part of animation is really seeing the finished product. And we'll just continue doing our in-betweens, just like before. And for the last in between on frame 12, I'm going to copy it from frame 6. So we'll copy frame 6 and paste it on frame 12, and then we'll reverse the limbs, making sure to keep that foot dragging just like I was talking about before. This is the part where it's going to snap back to the contact position. And there we have our completed walk cycle. So if you're doing your own custom character, I would recommend doing a really rough design like this first for your walk cycle, and then animating your more complicated design on top of it. Getting the proportions of a circle and a bean are a lot easier than getting the proportions of a complicated character with belt loops and all sorts of zippers and gizmos and gadgets. So starting simple with shapes like this can be a great way to start a walk cycle. So like I said before, this walk cycle has a duplicate frame. Frame 13 is actually the same frame as frame number 1. So now that we're done using it as reference for these two in-betweens, we can get rid of it. We no longer need it. So we can hold down on that frame and press the trash can to get rid of it and remove it. And now if we play our animation, now we have our completed walk cycle. Congratulations! If you like this tutorial, make sure to check me out on Twitch. I stream all the time and love to answer animation questions on there. You can follow me at twitch.tv/JESSEJAYJONES, twitch.tv/JesseJJones. Also, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified when I upload new animation tutorials. If you have any other questions, comments, or want to show off your walk cycle, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching everyone, and until next time, bye-bye!